Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to review this SelfCAD tutorial. It's a great tutorial that teaches hard surface modeling techniques. It also touches on some backface coloring, flip normal, some more advanced topics, but the design process itself is actually quite simple, which makes it a great tutorial. So let's get started. It starts with creating a basic cylinder, and we just setting the height over here, the height to 60, and I'm setting this to 16, the segments, and that's it, basically closing it. So it creates a basic cylinder, and it turns on the wireframe mode so I can see what's happening, and it turns on the edge mode so I can start selecting edges. What is oh, okay, I didn't read. It tells me to activate the gear icon, advanced settings, the gear icon, and turn on loop selection. Okay, so it's going to select the loop in the bottom over here, so I need to click on one and then the next, and that basically gives me selects the entire loop. And once I have the loop selected, it goes to fillet, which is I make it for 6 and 3, and this basically just kind of rounds this bottom, and then it's going to activate polygon selection. Actually, it's interesting, he uses all of the selections one after the other. First used edge selection, now it's using polygon selection, and I simply need to select these polygons, and now it's going simply to delete that. So what we have done now here is we created kind of a shell. This at this point is a surface which is not manifold. It's still off the backface coloring. We will turn around later, use it, but for now, if you would turn this on, you would see actually the inside color, because this is basically an open shape at this point. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to add thickness, and if you add the thickness of 5, this serves as two purposes. Obviously the visual, create the thickness, but also this makes it manifold, watertight rather. And now it's going to use vertex selection. So we actually use, again, now a different selection type, which is vertices. And we're going to select all of this. I just want to say, I've said that multiple times in other videos, if you see me following using simple marquee selection, this is not how you do it when you normally do it. You need to handpick these vertices and make sure not to select anything else. Normally, if you do marquee selection, you would end up selecting other things. I can only do this because in the interactive tutorial, SelfCAD knows what you need to select. So we kind of want you to follow it, but we make it easier, allow you to use any method means of selecting, and we kind of ignore the other vertices that we normally do. But in real design, you would kind of need to play a lot more carefully, not kind of like a simple broad selection would select unwanted vertices as well. But nevertheless, what we have done here is we've selected everything here in this rounded section, and over here, and it's going to use now scale to flatten it. I'm actually not sure why not the flatten tool, but it's the same idea probably. And in this case, it sets the X direction, which you see over here. This is the X, the depth in this case, and this became flat. Okay, so I can actually not close it yet. It tells me to activate now polygon selection again, and I select this polygon. So here I want to show you actually what happened. We had this thickness over here that was created. You see where I highlight over here, this thickness, and once we collapsed that, we actually made them kind of collapse. It's hidden the faces over here. So we have here inside faces that are kind of hidden, collapsed on top of each other. This may still be considered manifold, but because there may be some fraction off or so on, but in reality this is a bad design, so this will cause eventually may cause problems. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to scale this entire inside face. So basically the whole idea is to bring this back. This is what I was talking about. These faces here were kind of hidden and just collapsed and hidden inside, which is not a good idea. Okay, so now once we're done with that, we're going to switch to face selection. And again, so basically we're using all type of selections. And face selection is, and I've said that also in multiple videos, I'm just going to repeat that. If you have a polygon selected and you go down the ladder, something that is lower, which is face selection, this will stay selected, will not deselect, but this is now considered actually selecting faces. This may make a difference in some tools where they behave differently if you have a polygon or a face selection. So if you select the entire thing as a polygon, will be considered as a polygon. If you move down to faces, it will still be selected, but now it will be considered as a face selection. It just carries over the selection. But nevertheless, what we're going to do here is we need to select additional, so we can use again loop selection. We've used loops before with edges, now we're using loops with faces, And loop has two ways of doing it, which is also good to see now. So we have one way of clicking one face and then its neighbor, and then it selects the entire loop. Just the same thing we did before with the edges when we started. But it also has a way, and this is unique to SelfCAD. The behavior of clicking one and its neighbor is something you find in most CAD applications. SelfCAD has also the option to select a range. So if you click, for example, I don't want to select now the entire outside. I want to select only the inside range. So I click over here now for this loop, and then I click over here, and in this case it gives me this entire range. Now I'll do the same thing over here. I click here, and I click here, and it gives me this range. So all we have done is we have selected basically this entire section over here, and what we're going to do now is simply copy it. So this is, at this point, this is basically the copy that we made occupied the exact same space from the original face. So we have basically duplicate in the same thing, and it kind of gives this flickering thing depending on how you zoom the camera. You can see because basically we have two faces occupied the same thing. This is just for your info, and in technical terms this is called Z-firing, where you have like, sometimes this is the same color, so it's not really this, but sometimes you have different colors. You kind of see partially this, partially that, and that's called Z-firing because they're exactly in the same position. But now what we're going to do here is we're going to use the backface coloring, and I'm going to turn this on, backface coloring, and if you turn it on, it's actually hard to see. Actually, no, you still see the same color. So what happened here is, if you think about it, if you have any shape and it has a top and a bottom, the shape, if it's correct orientation, if the shape is done correctly, the top is pointing outwards and the inside from it is pointing inwards, and the same thing with this. So they have the same color. However, what we're going to do now requires actually to flip this. Let me show you. So we're going to go now flip normals. And once we flip it, now we have actually the Z-firing thing because they're the same position. You can partially see the inside color, partially not. But all we have done here is we have basically, you see, depending on the camera, how much you see from which color. What we have done here is that we made the copy which occupies the exact same space as the first thing over here. We made it point outwards, so it's kind of a flip thing. And why we do that? Because look at the next thing what we're going to do. We're going to use mirror now to make a copy and to position it on top. So now we have actually, we want this to be the inside and we want this to be the inside, and we're doing it like this, and then we're simply going to merge it. So what we're going to do is deselect the faces, select the other shape, the same shape, and we're going to click on, I click Control M, or you can use from here, so basically to merge it. Now once this is merged, what you see over here, this is pointing correctly. You see the top, it's pointing outwards, and you cannot see the bottom from this because it's hidden same place, but basically the entire inside is here. The thing here is, if you count the amount of vertices you have, where you need to kind of, when you merge this, you have two sections now merged, you need to remove all of these vertices over here where they connect. And if you count them up, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, I counted them, you have basically 13 vertices that needs to be removed in order this should become kind of watertight, complete together without gaps. Okay, but when we merge them, the merge is automatically removing vertices. But sometimes if you have like a shape like this, they're kind of bended and so on. There may be a fraction off, maybe 0.001, doesn't matter. It's like a fraction, and then it's left over. And if you watch the message that we just got when I merged them, it removed only 2 vertices, which probably means only in 2 locations they were like 100% exact. And to clean that up, to fix that, what we're going to do is the geometry clean, remove duplicates option. This is basically much more sensitive to these type of stuff. It finds these issues and it fixes it. And what we're going to do now is, you see, it removed 11 vertices. So we have a total of 13. 2 was already removed in the beginning, and now we have removed the remaining 11. So now this is connected, so it's considered kind of like watertight, which means in this section, meaning is there's no gaps between these connections between these 2 shapes. However, it's still open, the shape, so it's not watertight because, you know, it's still have a hole over here. And for this, we can either add like thickness like we did before, or in this case, we want to close it. We're going to use fill polygons, and this basically closes the shape. So now we have a perfect shape, and it's the correct orientation. Everything is okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to simply color it, and it asks me to select this color. And now we're going to use round objects, and this is what you use a lot with surface modeling. The idea with surface modeling, hard surface modeling, is that you create surfaces that are kind of approximation, it gives you the basic outline, but then you want them to kind of create smooth surfaces using a tool. And round object is in SelfCAD. This depends on which software you're using. Some are basically surface-based modeling software, have different techniques. In polygon modeling applications like SelfCAD, the idea here is you just round them using round objects, usually is the best way to do this type of stuff, and we close it. So what you see now here is we created this smooth cushion from a basic thing that we copied and so on. Okay, so now it's going to deselect this and it's selecting the other shape. And now what we're going to do here is another thing, kind of the same idea, that we're going to modify this, and it's going to use some clever techniques how to do it. So we have this shape that's, if you remember, it was created from a cylinder, it's part of a cylinder, and it's going to basically cut them into pieces. So first it's using the cut with plane, which is one of the options to cut. It's similar to the cut with profile, cube selection, cut with cube selection tool. But this is a little bit more flexibility, so you'll see. So first thing is, if I move it up, basically the cut will be here. So far it's the same as cube selection, it will be the cut here. But this gives me an option to make an offset. So I make it -18. So this is calculated exactly the angle how the cut will be done based on this plane that you see over here, this blue plane. This is how it will be cut. And then normally if you cut this for cube selection, for example, you're just going to make a cut. This actually has more flexibility in the idea that I can say split object. So after the cut, I will end up with two separate objects. And if you do split objects, you can also add fill cuts. So in this case, it will be closed, and I don't have to use then later fill polygons. After cutting, it's actually closing each shape, so we have two manifold shapes. And this is what we do over here. We cut that, and later we're going to remove this top. This top is going to be discarded, basically deleted, and we have this. But before doing it, the designer is first doing other steps. So we're going to go back to polygon selection, face selection and advanced settings, and we turn on loop selection again. And over here we're going to select this. Let's see, click on this one, and then click on this one over here. So it's a range loop. So select this entire inside as a loop. And this is, I've said that also in all the videos before, this is basically the beauty of working with quads. And the idea here is these cutting tools, if you think about a cut with plane or cube selection, these cutting tools are cutting, basically leaving quads, and it cuts it. If you would use, for example, stitch and scoop to position here something cut out, it will triangulate the mesh and will come triangles. And then once you have triangles, it's a lot more difficult to select ranges because loop selection is working only on quads. So once we have that, we can use the same flows we did before. Make a copy, I'll click Control-C, and basically have a copy of it. Now, again, the same thing, you cannot really see it. You can see Z firing a little bit here. I don't know how much is visible on the camera, but they're basically positioned the same thing. But we're actually going to change it. You'll soon going to be able to see. So I'm setting the Y to 70. So it's already moving up. And if you look at this way, you see now this is the outside, the coloring over here. And we're going to actually do symmetry to be able to scale the other side proportionally. This is how design figured out this is working, which, yeah, I don't know the exact flow. The exact measurements. But here we move it also, 11.5. So here we go. So we have this basic shape. And this is what I want to show you here. We still have on, it's good we still have on the backface coloring, because in most tools, in SelfCAD, they will automatically know how to flip normals, how to do things. It's only in the case where we had before, when we mirrored that, we kind of manually did certain things. So mirrored and fill polygon, we had to take care of it, flip normals. But in this case, you see actually what we're going to do here is we're going to add thickness to the inside. So normally if you want to fix this, like theoretically, if you need to fix this, you need to add thickness to this direction outside to close it, because this is facing inwards to the object. Then you add thickness, which basically it's going to build it out from this side and the other will face inwards. But this is actually asking me to add thickness from the inside. So a positive, it would normally need to be a negative. But even if we do a positive, you see this is being flipped because SelfCAD tools automatically know how to fix this, to detect this. So as I said, in most cases, you don't have to worry about the backface coloring, but still it's a good way of knowing this, and especially in the case we saw before, which actually you did need to manage them manually. Okay, so now we turn on edge selection again, going to another edge selection, again event selection, and again a loop selection. So this actually becomes quite interesting. So we have this basic shape, and we're going to turn it to quite a complex shape using these techniques, kind of hard surface modeling techniques. So let's see, there's another way of using it. It's actually quite clever how it's done. Move this down a little bit out of the way. Okay, so if I do this, I just loop select every second loop over here, and again this is quad, so it's easy to loop select, and we close it, and now it's going to go to chamfer, which is going to add, let me see how much, it's going to add one, just one. And the main idea here is to add a simple split over here, so we have these faces. And now once we have these faces, it's going to face mode, and again advanced settings, and again loop selection. So it's kind of repetitive, but yeah, this is what the design is. So it's actually using limited tools, not using that many tools, but despite the fact that it uses limited tools, the design actually is quite beautiful. And yeah, so this is basically what this is teaching, these type of tools, which is good. Okay, so if you see over here, once I select, the same idea, but instead of selecting edges now, we select faces, but the same loops. And now what it's going to do here is it's simply going to scale this. So what does it tell me to do? Scale the Y to 50. And all we did here is we made something strange looking here, and we deselect the faces. But now we're going to simply color it, and now we're going to do the same thing we did before around objects. And if you see the way it looks now, this is kind of an outline what we want it to be, and then the round object 3, the same as before, is actually rounding that, and it makes look the nice cushion. So this is actually quite easy to do, as opposed to making these as actually hard surfaces and everything. It would be 10 times more faces and much more complex to do, and this is actually relatively easy with this flow. Okay, so now what we're doing over here is let's see, select cube. It tells me to select these faces over here, these options over here, and this mesh, okay, and it's using isolate, so basically hiding away this other piece. Okay, so now we've hidden away this other piece, and we have the basic shape, and now it's going to move it up. I'm not sure exactly why, I guess just for visuals, so we can see what's happening. And now it's deselecting this, and it's changing the color from this selected shape, which is turning this to white. And now it's going to round this as well. Here it's rounding it only to 2, a little less smooth, and finalizing it. And now we have, okay, so now, okay, I know why it's lifted up, because we're going to add the legs now. So we need to have space to add the legs. So we have the basic shape already done. Now it's going to add the legs. And this is also going to use now a basic cylinder. I'm just going to click next to set the cylinder. And we have here the basic cylinder, which has a wider top than the bottom, but the main idea here is that there's no segments in this direction. You see the radius has changed to 3 and a 1, and the segments is only 1. This is what makes a big difference here. You'll see why, because now it's going to go back to polygon selection, and I'm going to select this polygon at the bottom, and it's going to go to move, and simply move that the Z to 32. Now this gives it this angle over here, the line deselected, so it gives this leg this angle that is needed like this, because it's basically skewed. Now it was able to do that because there's no segments here, otherwise this wouldn't be possible. In case if you do have segments, you need segments for other reason, or this is a bended leg or something like that, then you can use the skew tool. The skew tool basically doing the same thing, but without segments you can simply move the bottom face, and yeah, how it's done now. Okay, so now we go to copy offset. We're going to make the other copies over here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make the Z to minus 52, and it's going to add another option. So it's going to add over here to rotate, a rotation, and it's going to rotate by 180 degree, which is basically a complete an opposite rotation. So this will kind of be in a click copy, and as you can see, it's moved this the center, so this is 52 one direction, so this is minus 52 the other direction, and then it's rotated, so it's facing outwards. Now what it's doing, it's closing the deal. Actually, here's interesting. I think the designer may have not known this. It's closing this tool, and then it's going to open again and make the copy backwards. I think what the designer was trying to do is to remove the rotate, make a new one, but actually in reality there is a X here to remove it, so you don't need this function to close the tool and open it again, because this automatically see these two are selected. So if you do something like this, a copy, you can just go and delete something and change and make the next copy, which will copy the two things that are already selected. So, but nevertheless, it doesn't matter how it's done, mainly it works. So design is doing the same thing now, opening it again while this is still selected, and now making the X to minus 58, which is basically just a copy like this to the other direction. And here we go, we have this completed. And now what we need to do here is it's going to group this. So we're going to close Control or Command G to group it. And now it's going to color this as well with the same color we colored the basic bottom. And now it's going to simply select this and using Stitch and Scoop Union to combine them. So we have them combined, and now it's turning on this mode so we can see, and this basically is done. So the object is done. So this is actually quite smooth and relatively easy to do, but more importantly, it's actually low poly. If you think about it, it has only a total of 17,000 faces. It may sound a lot, 17,000, but in relative terms, a smooth object like this and so many details, if you consider making these type of shapes using surface modeling techniques, you will end up probably 200,000 faces, something like that. So in relative terms, it's actually quite low poly. So that's it basically. You can actually merge them all together also now if you want. This is no longer a part of a tutorial, but just to show you, you can actually union them all together, and they maintain the colors. SelfCAD's union maintains colors, and we can get rid of this extra shape that we have used to cut out. And that's it basically. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new, and let me know in the comments if you want me to show anything else or if you have any other questions. Bye.